Hello and welcome to the Futures Lab. So this week we're finally adding item to our Undertale game, and all the previous work that we've done on Act and Mercy and making submenus work is going to make this a lot easier. We're going to build off of all of that work. So head across to the heart sprite and look across until you find define submenu, and you should also have your define act and define mercy. Now what we're going to do is we're going to copy one of these like this, and we need to change these lists here. So we need to make a new list, go to variables, scroll down to make a list, and we'll call this list item submenu, press OK. Then we're going to go to my blocks, and we're going to click on make a block. We're going to call this item, press OK. Now drag that define item over our new bit of code here and change these lists to item submenu and item submenu here. So somewhere in your code you'll have this when I receive text hide. So we should probably put a show underneath define submenu just to make sure that whenever we're in a mercy act or item submenu, the heart has shown itself. So go to looks, get out a show and put it right underneath define submenu. Next, we need to make sure that our define item is going to work. So go across until you find define menu, look all the way to the bottom, and you'll find you've got 3 if menu buttons selected equals. And one of them is missing. We've got one for 0, which is fight. We've got one for 1, which is act. And we've got one for 3, which is mercy. So let's copy one of these. Put it right here, make sure it's nicely in line with the others, change this number to 2, and change this word to item. We also need to make sure we have a new broadcast. We need to broadcast, new message, item. Press OK. And finally, the last thing that we need to do in our heart sprite is make sure that our new item my block runs when we're in the item mode. So look for when green flag clicked. We've got if mode equals. Let's copy one of those. Make sure it's nicely in line. Change this word to item. Take away this my block and put in our new item my block. Okay, and that's everything in our heart sprite done. Let's head across to our submenu sprite and see what we need to add in there. So we've got our when I receive act and when I receive mercy. We need to create a when I receive item. Let's duplicate one of these, change this to item, and then change these two lists, the item submenu, and everything else should be able to stay the same. Now we need to figure out what items do we actually want. I'm just going to duplicate this here. We need to make sure that we delete everything in the item submenu. And then I'm going to add 3 different items to my game. The first one's going to be cake. That's going to heal you. The next one's going to be coffee. That's going to make your player a bit faster. And the last one is going to be an item that can be used again and again and again. There's a couple of items in Undertale that don't disappear when you use them. I'm going to call this box of band-aids. Now we need to go into the costumes and add new costumes for these 3 new items. So make sure that you name them, make sure that you spell correctly. You can have shorter versions of the names if you want, but just make sure that in your code you spell it exactly the same. And remember that the titles of your costumes are also case sensitive, so it does matter if you use capital letters or not. So make sure it's consistent across all of your code to make sure that nothing goes wrong. Okay, let's head back to the code, shall we? One last double check that we're sending these to the right list. And as you can see, these are going to the act submenu, so that's not right. We need to make sure that these are going to the item submenu list. And let's give it a test to make sure it's all working. This is looking great. Excellent. All right, well, let's head back to the code, and this should be everything that we need in the submenu sprite. So let's head across to the text sprite. When you're there, look around for when I receive text. We're going to make some more my blocks to go in here. So click on make a block, The first one is item cake, then item coffee, and finally item box of bandages. Get these my blocks and put them in underneath when I receive text. Once all three of them are there, find some space for your new defines. Now, the first one that we're going to do is going to be define item cake. I want this to be a healing item, and Undertale has a lot of different healing items, and I want to have more than one healing item. So I'm going to create a my block that will sort out the healing for me. So click on make a block and call this heal. And then we're going to add an input, and we're going to call that amount. Drag this off somewhere by itself. We'll put some text underneath define item cake before we do the healing. For that, I'm just going to copy what's underneath one of the other simpler my blocks. Remember, what you need is if mode equals and then the name of the item. You also need a wait until key any pressed at the end. And let's change some of this text, shall we? Okay, I'm pretty happy with this. Now let's get out our new heal my block, and we'll say that the cake heals you for 50 hit points. So let's put some code underneath our define heal. So let's start off with the simplest way that we could do this. Go to control, get out a repeat, get your amount input and put it over the 10, and then go to variables and get out a change player current hit points, or player current HP. Now, don't get confused with this player HP. This player HP variable is actually this one here, which is 100/100. It's the one that we see. But we want player current HP. In fact, what you might even want to do, if you think this might confuse you, is rename player HP, which I'm going to do. I'm going to rename player HP to display player HP, so I don't get confused. Now, of course, we could just change player current HP by 50 once, and that would also work, but it wouldn't look as satisfying as watching the HP points tick up one by one. So let's give it a test and see what it looks like, shall we? Okay, so when we select cake, you eat the cake, it is delicious. And you can see that looks pretty cool, but now we've gone to 150 hit points out of 100. So that's a problem, because in most games you're not meant to have more HP than your maximum HP. That's why it's called maximum HP. So let's fix that, shall we? First, let's make a new variable. We're going to call this heal, and make this for all sprites. The reason why will become clear later. Press OK. And we're going to, at the beginning of our code, set heal to amount. And then instead of repeating amount, we're going to repeat heal. Now what we're going to do is, before this repeat, we're going to put in an if then. So the first question we need to ask is this amount of healing going to take us over our max HP? So get out a less than operator, and then get out a minus operator. We want to take our amount and put that into the second section of our less than, and then on this left side with the minus, we want to have our player max HP take away our player current HP. So if this if is true, it means the healing would take us over our maximum hit points. So we need to make sure that it doesn't. And then all we need to do is get out a set heal to whatever that difference is between our maximum HP and our current HP. So just copy this minus here and put that there. So let's start the game again and see if it's any better this time. Okay, so when we select cake, will it take us over our maximum? No, it doesn't. Good, very good. So now we should let the player know what's happened. Go to My Blocks and get out a Write block. Now we could just say something like, you regain HP, and that's nice and simple. But now that we've got this heal variable, we can actually tell the player how much HP they've just regained. So if we go to operators and get out a join apple banana, put that right there, and then another join apple banana, put it in the apple, and now we can join these three things together. So the first thing that we'll put in is you regain, and then a space. Then we'll get our heal variable, because that should still tell us how much healing we've just done. And then in the final part of the join, put a space, and then HP. And let's make sure this is line number 1. Then at the bottom, we'll put in a broadcast, erase text, and just before that, we'll put in a wait until any key pressed. Now let's make sure we've got an easy way of testing this. I'm going to get out a when E pressed, and I'm going to make the HP go down by, let's say, -7. So we'll say change player current HP by -7. So let's give this a test, shall we? I'm going to start the game, press E a couple of times, and then let's eat this cake. You eat the cake, it is delicious. The HP goes up. We need to make sure we delete the cake text before the HP text comes up. So that's an easy fix. Before this heal 50, we can have another wait until any key pressed and broadcast erase text. Let's give that a try now. Item cake, you eat the cake, it is delicious. Nothing happens yet. And you can see, because we were already at maximum hit points, we regained 0 HP. All right, let's try that again. This time I'm going to make us lose a bunch of HP. Okay, we'll eat this cake. You eat the cake. It is delicious. There we go. It goes up. You regain 50 HP. Excellent. That works out really well. So now we need to make sure that once we've eaten the cake, it goes away. It's going to be a usable item, and once it's consumed, it's gone. So go to your variables codes and scroll down until you get to the list codes and look for delete one of, and then we're going to change that to item submenu. Here's a little bit of a problem though. Let's say we also want to consume the coffee once we've drunk that. So if we get out delete 2 of item submenu, make sure the game's started so our full list is here. Now, if we click this one here, brilliant, we drank the coffee. If we start it again, and first we eat the cake, and then we drink the coffee, watch what happens. Once the cake was gone, now all the numbers have changed. So first what we need to do is make sure that we find the correct number for the item that we're looking to delete before we delete it. Thankfully, we can get out this item hash of thing right here. This hash, or you might think of it as a hashtag, it stands for number in this case. So we want to get the item number of, let's say, cake in the item submenu, and we want to delete that. So now, whenever we delete this one here, we will always delete the cake. And if we try and click this again, it won't delete anything because there is no cake in the submenu. And likewise, we can copy this and make it work for coffee as well. When we click this, the coffee goes away. Perfect. So we can get rid of this delete coffee and this delete 2. We can take this delete here and put it right here in our define item cake code. So every time you want an item to be consumable, meaning that when you use it, it's gone, just put in this delete item hash of, then the name of your item. If you want the item to be reusable, like my box of Band-Aids is, just don't include this line, and the box of Band-Aids will never go away, no matter how many times you use the item. So now that our items are deleting themselves after we use them, there is one thing I would like to prevent from happening. Do you remember what happens if we use the cake and we're already on full hit points? You still eat the cake, even though you regain 0 hit points. So what I want to happen is, if you try to eat the cake while you are on maximum hit points, I want it to come up with a message saying you are already at full health and prevent you from wasting that item. So let's get back to the code. So get out if then else, and we want all of this code to be under the if not under the else. So we need to see if we are at full hit points or not. So go to operators, get out a less than operator, go to variables, and get out player current HP for the first socket, and player max HP for the second. So if the player current HP is less than the max, we know we've got at least some hit points that need healing. But if this is not true, we are at full hit points. So we're going to make a new my block to go underneath this else. We're going to call this my block full health and press OK. Drag a full health my block underneath that else, and then get this define full health and move it where we've got some space underneath it. So first, let's tell the player what's happening. Let's get out some write lines. Then we need a wait until any key is pressed. Then we need to broadcast erase text. And what we want to do is go back to the item menu. So let's also broadcast item. And let's set the mode back to item. Now let's see what this does so far, because I have a feeling we're going to have a few problems. Let's start the game again. And we'll try and eating this cake. You are already at full health. Okay, well there's two problems that I can see. The first is that our turn ended even though we didn't want it to. And the second is that it looked like this message came up a second time. Let's fix the first problem and then we'll think about the second. So we need a way of making sure that our turn doesn't end if we end up using this full health code. So what we're going to do is create a new variable. And we're going to call this variable invalid choice. Now the word invalid in this case means you've chosen something that you're not allowed to choose, and it's going to send you back to the menu to make a different choice. You only need this variable to be for this sprite only. Press OK. And at the end of define full health, we are going to set invalid choice to yes. Now let's go and find the code that's ending the turn when we don't want it to. That is over in when I receive text. You can see at the very bottom we've got this broadcast end player's turn. All we need to do is get out an if then else, and then move this broadcast under the else. We're going to go to operators, get out an equals, go to variables, and get out our invalid choice. If the invalid choice variable is set to yes, we are not going to broadcast the end player's turn, but otherwise we are going to end the player's turn. Now we should make sure that we have a way of turning this invalid choice back to no, so we can do that right here under the if. Otherwise your invalid choice will always be yes, and every choice that you choose will be rejected, and we don't want that. Let's test the game again and see if it ends the turn when we end up trying to eat a healing item while we're on full health. Okay, so item, cake, you are already at full health. Okay, well that's really good. So we're not ending the player's turn, but when I'm pressing Z, now if I press any other button, it will end that bit of text there. But I was pressing the Z button, which is also our OK button, and it was automatically choosing the cake option again. Watch again. So we need to fix that, otherwise the player might think they're stuck in an infinite loop. That's a nice and easy change to make. All we need to do is go back to our full health code, and just below our broadcast erase text, we need to get out a wait until not key Z pressed. Okay, let's test it and see if it works. All right, we use the cake while on full health. We are already at full health, and it sends us back to the item menu. Perfect, excellent. Well, with that done, let's program in coffee and box of band-aids, and it should be a lot easier to do those two. So for define item coffee, I'm going to copy some code from elsewhere and change some of this here. Okay, I'm pretty happy with this text. All we need to do now is change the player speed by 1. And then make sure that we delete the coffee afterwards. I'll just drag this down, save me having to get it all out individually again. Make sure that this is spelled correctly. You can do this with all sorts of stats. You could have an item that makes the enemy's defense go down, or their chance of dodging your attack go down. Get creative. Think about what other things that you could do with interesting items. And for the box of band-aids, I think it will work almost exactly the same as the cake. I'll just get this and put it on top of all this copied code and change some of this. But I don't want it to go away, so I'm going to get rid of this delete item, and I'm going to make the healing a lot weaker than the cake because this is the reusable item, so it probably should be weaker. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that text. Let's give it a test, and we'll use the box of band-aids. You're already at full health, that's fine. I'll take us down and then heal us. You use 1 band-aid from the box. Now, because the HP didn't change very much there, it might not be super obvious to the player when they're regaining the 7 HP. Now this next part is optional, but if you want, we could put on a bit of an animation on this HP bar. So let's head back to the code and let's head across to the health bar. So the health bar sprite is fairly simple with its code. It's got just this here and the screen shake code. We're going to put something right here that will make sure that when we are healing, the box will animate in some way. So we're going to go to control and get out an if then else. Put that right here. Then we're going to go to operators, get out a more than, go to variables and get out heal. And we want to see if heal is more than 0. Now you could put any animation here that you wanted, but I am going to use a bit of code that I learned from GriffPatch, which I really liked, which will make it slowly get a bit bigger and then slowly get a bit smaller once the healing is done. So this is how the code works, and I'm not going to explain it in detail because you can just go and check out his video on the subject and he explains it a lot better than I could have. But it's nice and simple. Go to looks and get out change size by. Then go to operators. Get out a times by operator and put it inside your change. Then we want to get out a minus operator and put that in the second socket. Now go to looks and get out your size variable right here. Get that there and put it right here. And now what this will do is this is the size that your sprite will move towards. So if the size we've got is 100 and we want it to get larger, then I'm going to make it go up to 120. Now this number here is how fast it will move to that target size, that 120. And I'm just going to choose 0.2. It has to be less than 1. It has to be 0 point something. And then that's it. This will slowly grow the health bar up to a maximum of 120. And then when the healing is done, we just need to make sure that it moves back to 100. And let's see if that works. Now, here's a problem. When we start the game, the heal is still set to 7, so the HP bar is already big. So we should make sure that the heal is set to 0 when green flag clicked. So look around for your when green flag clicked code. And we should set heal to 0. And while we're here, our new variable, invalid choice, we should also set to no. This is going to prevent a bunch of glitches that happen if you stop your game halfway through, and it's just good practice. When you start a game, you really should set all of your variables to their default value. So that's everything for this week. I would love to hear from you in the comments. Let me know what kind of items you're going to make in your Undertale game. As always, you can also let me know what you would like me to do next, or if you need any help with your code. You can always subscribe and ring the bell if you want notifications when the next episode is ready for you. And aside from that, stay awesome, be cool to each other, and take care of yourselves. We'll see you next time, ninjas.